Hey, this is Professor Homa. Welcome to csc103. This is our layered photo editing assignment, Soccer Dog. And what you're going to need to do is go into My Warren. And I already did this, so I'm not seeing my download file, so I'm going to go back into instructions. But you're going to have two files to download. And if you download both of these, you could do them one at a time. I'll just do Save Link As. That way you could save them directly where you want to save them. And I'm going to put them into my csc103 folder. And I have a folder called Images right now, and I'm going to save Soccer Goal in there. And there it was just downloaded in that folder. I'm also going to download Dog Soccer by going Save Link As. And I'll save that in the folder. And we're going to be opening these up into Pixlr. So I'm going to open up a new tab and go to pixlr.com. No E in Pixlr. And again, if you get a message about needing the Adobe Flash Player, if it's in Chrome, you could just hit Leave and then allow the Flash Player. Or if you're in Firefox, it may just tell you to activate the Flash Player. But either way, you shouldn't have a problem with that if you're in Chrome or Firefox, which I would recommend. And I'm just going to scroll down here and look for the Pixlr Editor and launch the web app. We're going to open images from computer because those are the ones that we just downloaded. So I'm just going to go find my Soccer Goal. And I'll open that one first. That'll just kind of sit in the background. And then I'll also, remember, don't go to the Chrome one, go into the one that's in the web app and do File, Open Image. And I'm going to open up Dog Soccer. And there it is. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this part of this image just kind of roughly, and then we're going to put it in front of this other image. We're going to make a composite image in Photoshop. It'll become a separate layer. On this image here, it'll become a separate layer and it'll look like it's part of it. So that's what we plan to do. Okay, and if you have one on top of the other and you can't really see the other one, you could click on this little icon here with the windows, and that'll kind of bring one to the front, and then you could use this arrow to kind of choose which one. So if you want to go back to Dog Soccer, you could go here, and you can see it's a little darker image, so we're going to adjust it a little bit. But first we're going to use the selection tool. We're going to use the lasso. And we're just going to kind of draw around it real rough. Doesn't have to be real good. I'm just doing this with my touchpad, so it's a little harder to do it without a mouse. But even with a mouse, it's not the easiest thing. But I just don't want to cut anything off. I'm just going to go around real rough. Just go around here, and with the lasso, when you get back to the beginning, you could just let go, and it should make a selection. This is selecting all those pixels. And all that we want to do is we could go right over here in the menu. You could use shortcuts, but we're just going to go Copy. And then if we want to go back to the other window, whether you have two windows up or whether you go here and go back to Soccer Goal, then what we're going to do is we're going to paste the dog into there. So we're just going to do paste. There he is, and he's real big. And if you want to scale it down, you could go on this arrow tool. And what we want to do to scale the layer down, because he's kind of cut off here, he doesn't have to be quite this big, but we also don't want to make him as small as he's going to be in the goal. We want to keep him as large as we can. So we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to use Free Transform. And we're just going to grab a corner here and hold Shift to keep it in proportion. And just kind of scale them enough so you can kind of see the outside. So you have a little bit of room around the outside. Again, it may be bigger than you need. You'd rather work bigger and then go smaller later than make it too small right now. So that's probably good. You could hit Enter or Return, or if you click somewhere else, it's going to ask you, do you want to apply the changes? And you could hit Yes. So that's what we want to do. And before I do any kind of silhouetting, which is removing the background, I'm going to go into Adjustment, and I'm going to use Levels. And I'll just see kind of the distribution of pixels. You can see it's missing a little bit of light pixels up here. That means it's a little bit on the darker side. So I'm going to adjust the highlights a little bit. So I'm going to shift this down just a little bit, just to shift the highlights. That'll kind of shift the entire image so everything's a little bit lighter. So the lightest thing in here is the soccer ball. Now I don't want to go too light and bleach out the soccer ball. If I just slide it down to where these kind of mountains of pixels start, that should be good. I could even lighten the midtones just a little bit. And that leaves the highlights alone. It just attacks the midtones, or it just targets the midtones. So I'll do that right now, and I'll hit OK. And that looks a little bit better since he's out in the sunshine. And what I'll do next, and this will just take some time, so I'll just do a little bit of this, is you're going to use an eraser, and you're just going to kind of go around the dog and just kind of remove the background. So I'm going to zoom in so I can see a little better. And I'm going to go up to the eraser tool. Looks like an old-fashioned pink eraser. And up here they have size, and you'll see they'll have like soft erasers and hard erasers, and basically you'll adjust the diameter, which is the size, which this is the size. You can see if I put it over here, you can see that's the size. That might want to be, that's a pretty good size for probably erasing around him. And then also this is the hardness. So if you put it 100%, it'll be a real hard edge like this. If you leave it halfway, it'll be kind of soft. I'm going to go up just a little bit more. I still want it soft because he has fur. You don't want the fur, you want it kind of semi-transparent around the edges. You don't want it to look like it's cut out. So I'm going to put it up around 70, and I'll try to see how that looks. And I'll start to erase around here, and basically I'm just going to use my mouse and just kind of paint. And what'll happen, because he's on a separate layer, you can see it's called layer 1 right now. And I'll try out a little, and then I'll stop. And I'll go around the edge here. And again, you don't want to go all the way around, because if you undo, it'll undo the last thing you did. So you wouldn't want to like erase all around it and then you screw up and undo something, and then it'll undo a lot of things you already did. So I'm just going to start going around here. And you could sometimes go around just the edge of it and then do it real rough later. So even if I made my brush a little bit smaller, I could go here and maybe make it 40. And now I have a little bit smaller of a brush. And I'm going to go around here, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And you could even leave this extra stuff till later. But I'm just going to go around the dog as best as I can and just kind of go around the edge of him first. And that's why I said if you leave go of your mouse, then if you screw something up, you could undo. You can do an edit undo, and it'll just kind of take away the last part that you did. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see over here. And I'm going to put it back in a window so I could kind of see the scroll bars on here. I can make this a little bit bigger. And you can use your zoom tool if you want to zoom into just part of it down here. If you want to zoom into this part, you could do that. Now I have my scroll bars down here. So I'll scroll down a little bit more so I can see the bottom part of his foot. And I'll go back to my eraser. And I'm going to go back on my eraser and start erasing this. I was using the wrong tool there for a little bit. And I'll just start getting rid of this. And I'll just go around. And you can see how when it's soft, it kind of lets the fur kind of, you can see through the fur a little bit. It looks a little more realistic, especially from further away. And you could always go in with a smaller brush and get smaller details, but I'm just getting around him as best I could. I could use a bigger, but if you have more areas with a lot of fur, you could use a bigger brush. And if you have small areas, and here's a shortcut too, you could use the less than sign to make a smaller brush without changing it. So I could go in here if I needed to get a little tighter in here. Although keep in mind when you make the brush smaller, it's going to make that, it's not going to be quite as soft because the brush is kind of scaled down. So if you need to get in and do some details with a small brush, you can, and you could use the less than and greater than sign or the period and comma on your keyboard to kind of adjust that as you go without having to go back up here and adjust it there. So I'll keep going around here and just kind of finish him off here, and I'll move over so I can kind of see what I'm doing. So I see that's his foot, and that's pretty much what you're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out here, and I did most of this. It's probably not perfect, but I did as much as I could just to demo this a little bit. Now, one other thing I want to point out is you want to do this as big as possible so you can see the edges well, and then when you want to resize it, then what you could do is you could go back to Edit, Free Transform again, then you could scale it down. What you don't want to do is like make it real small and then decide you want it bigger later. You don't want to make it like really small and hit enter and then decide, oh no, I think I want it bigger, and then scale it up again, because what's going to happen when you do that, if I go back to Free Transform, is then when you scale it up, it's going to look blurry because you already redistributed those pixels to be real small. Now when I make it bigger, it looks blurry. So I want to make sure I don't do that, and I'm going to just kind of escape out of this, and I'll go back in my history and go back to the size it was. You always want to make sure that keep it as big as possible and then just scale it down once. So if you want to make it a little bit smaller to fit in a goal, you could just Free Transform and try it out before you hit OK. So let's say I want them about that big, and I want to put them in the goal. And again, you could put shadows on here. There's different things you could do, but just for this assignment, this is fine. And that's a good size to have in the goal. He's probably bigger than a dog would be in a soccer goal. It's not really to scale, but that's okay right now. And I'm going to hit enter or return. And there it is. And that's all you really have to do for this assignment. This is called compositing. You're putting one image on top of another, and we're using a silhouetting technique where we're just kind of getting rid of the background. You could use erasing. We could use masks, which are a little more protective because it doesn't actually delete pixels. But just for now, we're just using erasing with a, mixing up a soft and hard brush and adjusting the sizes. Just getting used to that if you've never done this in Photoshop or in Pixlr, which we're using right now. So this composite image, two things you can do. You can save this as a PXD. That means you could always get back to see the layers again. Now, PXD can only be opened up in Pixlr, but if you wanted to do that, you could make sure you do it in here. You can do save. Now, normally it'll just save it as a JPEG, but if you needed to come back to it or you weren't done with it yet, you could save it as this PXD file, and I'll just leave it as soccer goal right now, or, I'll put like -comp because it's the composite, and I'll hit OK, and you can see it's calling it soccergoalcomp.pxd. I'm on a Mac right now, so it's saving it as a PXD, and I'll just put that in there. That's not the one I'm going to upload, but I just want to show you that you can save a PXD file if you need to go back to it and open it up again in Pixlr. But if you're done with this, then what you can do is you could do a file save, and you could just save it as a JPEG, and you could just call it, I guess this was exercise, I think it was, let me double check. This was exercise 4. So I'll go back and just save this as 4-dogsoccer. And you could put your name at the end if you want to. You could do an underscore, put your last name first initial. You don't have to put the extension until you're ready. I'll hit OK. And on a Mac, it'll put the extension. On Windows, it may not, but you can reset Windows so it will see extensions in folder options. But I'm going to save it like this, and this is the one that you're going to upload, this JPEG right now. So I'm going to save this and make sure it's different than Dog Soccer and Soccer Goal. It's Dog Soccer Exercise 4 with my last name on it. So I'm going to save that, and that's it. And then you could close it up. And it says, do you want to save? And that's only if you want to save the PXD. If you already have the PXD saved, you don't have to save this. So I'm going to hit no. And this is the original Dog Soccer. I don't need to save this. Unless I need to do anything with it, I don't need to save this either. So I'll close both of those, both of the original files, and now I have a PXD that I had saved, and I have my finished Dog Soccer JPEG saved, and that's all I need to do. And then I could just go back here, and then again you would upload in your My Warren when you're done. You'd upload that file and make sure when you go through that whole process that you click on this when you're done, when you finally upload it. So that's exercise 4, Soccer Dog for CSC 103.